I had to go over these palladium and supply and demand numbers again because it looks like some of the numbers that are published on the internet, you really don't see what's behind them, so they're very suspect. I had some numbers I was looking at. It looked like the article was published in August 2011, and it showed that a forecasted demand for palladium was 11.5 million ounces. I don't think so. I know the palladium demand has been up, but it's not up like 1/3 as that would have claimed. I'm going to use the 2010 numbers I got off the internet because I think they might be hard numbers. Automotive at 5.5 million, industrial at 2.5 million, jewelry at about 600,000, about 8.5 million ounces used in 2010. Now, I know approximately, even though Japanese automotive production was not up in 2011 due to the tsunami and earthquake, the overall global automotive production was probably up about 10%. And that's a rough estimate, but I will assume 10% more additional demand in the automotive sector and the industrial sector, and I know jewelry demand for palladium was down. So I'm going to estimate that approximately 9.25 million ounces was used in for demand of palladium in 2011, up 3/4 million ounces. Now, as far as the mining supply, they got that at 7.3 million ounces. They put it the same as 2011. It may be down a little bit because Norilsk Nickel in Russia, this one company, this one mine in Russia produces, well, the company in Russia produces 39% of all the palladium that is mined in the world, just Norilsk Nickel. And of the 39%, almost all of it's coming from this one mine. So they produced in the first 9 months of 2010 about 2.2 million ounces, and it dropped a little bit, to 2.1 million ounces. It dropped like 5.5% approximately in that period of time. I saw figures of 5.1%, 5.5%, 6%. So I mean, I'm not 110% sure of the exact numbers to pinpoint, but I don't think you really need to know pinpoint accuracy with this, unless you're selling it and it's for money. But as far as estimating what the future demand is going to be and supply, I think, you know, ballpark numbers, as long as they're reasonably accurate, is good enough. In 2010, they had a 500,000 ounces of palladium shortfall worldwide, globally. In 2011, that 500,000 shortfall was increased to a 3/4 million, 750,000 ounce surplus. And that story broke, I think, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and that's what drove the palladium prices down. It was that actual story. It was psychological on the market. And, you know, traders say, oh my God, so they sell off. According to this other article I saw, they're talking about there was going to be a shortfall from Russian inventory of 3.75 million ounces because they were assuming demand was 11.5 million ounces. I don't see that. I don't know where that number, that forecast demand number was 11.5 million ounces. But in any case, to go from figuring about Russian, there must have been a shortfall of about 1.5 million ounces, and then increase the surplus, the deficit to a surplus. They must have had to come up with about 2.7 million ounces out of Russian inventory. That's a lot, because that's more than their yearly production. So, you know, they've been rumoring that the Russian inventories are almost depleted. They're almost depleted. But I think they are now. And I want to take a hazard to a guess who the buyers are at these low prices, because these are the reasons to invest in palladium. Central banks are buying palladium in addition to gold for their foreign reserves. So, you know, actually I would say palladium right now is a far better deal than gold, far better. You know, worldwide currency devaluation, which is the same reason anybody holds precious metals. Palladium is actually more rare than platinum. And considering it's in one place, pretty much, in the world, where most of the supply is, you know, any kind of problem that occurs where Russia's not going to export the material, or just going to have China as an exclusive buyer or whatever, I mean, that's going to really drive the price way up. There is no real substitute for palladium except platinum, and platinum is currently about 2.5 times the price of palladium. I want to get into this process, this mining process. They got this process called ActiveVox technology, and it was actually discovered a little while ago. I mean, years ago. And Lionor, which is in Canada, owned and developed the ActiveVox hydrometallurgical nickel processing technology. And there was speculation that, and you know what, I'd say this was a spike story early on in the year. I didn't really pay much attention to it, but and I didn't make that as any of my postulates for what I base my decision on. But I saw an earlier article in, I don't know what publication it was, that there was speculation that Norilsk in Russia was going to use this ActiveVox technology for processing nickel in that mine that's in Russia. To me, that's ludicrous. That's totally ludicrous, because they produce 39% of the palladium in the world, and it's also 36% of their revenue. Are they going to lose 36% of their revenue so they can make up a little more money on nickel, or are they all of a sudden caring about the environment? Because that is the most polluted place in the world, and it's been that way for decades. I mean, they don't even allow foreign visitors there for the last 10 years. It's so polluted. So, I think Norilsk is just going for money, and they're not going to lose their palladium production. That's ludicrous. And that was a story I seen in some of the things that probably used to influence investors. But assume they will never use this technology in the mine in Russia that's producing 39% of the global supply. Looking at the Fibonacci on palladium, and I do think this works pretty good over a long period of time. Palladium, it depends where you set this. I know the price actually did dip to $150 an ounce at one point in time. I used $175, so I figured the pullback would be about the $592. If you put $150 in there, it's at $582. So approximately right now, more than likely, is according to this, the Fibonacci. That's about what you're going to see as far as a pullback in palladium. Fundamentally, there should be a major shortage coming up next year, because even though the demand isn't that much higher, I don't know where they're going to get the Russian inventory from. And it looks like Norilsk Nickel's production is down a little bit. And as a side note, they have a hard time finding miners to work in this place because it's so polluted, even at 2.5 times the average salary for miners. You know, it's also a fact that there isn't a living tree around this mine for a 30-mile radius. It's so polluted. So if you work in this place for 2.5 times the salary, you're probably dead, you know. So they can't get miners. And I'm assuming as time goes on, the output is probably going to lower. It looks like it lowered this year somewhat as far as palladium goes. But as we notice, every year automotive production is going up 10%, and there's also another market that's coming into play. It's called off-road vehicles are being subjected to higher and higher pollution standards, and it's going to have an impact on the palladium market. I mean, not like the entire automotive industry, but it will have an impact. And there isn't much room in this market for this stuff to move. Now, looking at the live prices, palladium right now sits at $584. I mean, as of these four metals, palladium right now is the screaming buy, and I want to emphasize that. In my case, I am definitely into oil a lot, and I was looking at some of the political things that there would be possibly a strike in Iran, and I think there will be. And I'm looking at it from the angle that Israel, well, I'm just going to go straight up and say, you know Iran is trying to get the nuclear weapons, and they're going to do it in a very shrewd way. Whether they should or shouldn't, but I know what Israel's worried about. It's not even so much that, it's the fact if they wait much longer, they're not going to be able to strike them because they'll be so buried into the ground and in so many different places and hidden so well, they're not going to get it. They're not going to be able to knock it out. So I think I kind of understand the mentality, and I think they're gonna do it. So I'm looking at these things, as far as the charts go on oil, and I know like there's a lot of resistance between the 102, 103 mark, the 100 psychological, 105, but I may sell it depending if I see oil go in one direction and silver going in an opposite direction like I did before. More than likely I'll probably sell some of the oil and buy some physical silver. But my bet is that oil is going to go right off this chart very fast and maybe pull back and settle down after things calm down. I don't buy the World War III story. If there's going to be a World War III, that's because Zhirinovsky got drunk and he went into one of the missile silos in Russia that started it. And they could be over this crap. I'm not buying into that. But as far as this, it's interesting to look at these charts, but I know a lot of times you can't predict an outside event. And if you can't predict an outside event, that's what you really want to go with. I think the outside event is going to be possibly strike on Iran. And I think they're going to do it pretty soon. So I'm going to hold off on most of this stuff. And if I see that happen, I'll be selling this off and going into the metals. I think that's going to cause the metals to pull back. So, but in the short term, I could still see silver floating back up to $40 an ounce even by the end of the year. The markets can surprise people. There's a lot of buying. There's a lot of physical buying in silver. I look at the sites and I keep seeing out of stock. Not everything out of stock, but I see too much out of stock to make me believe that this price is anywhere realistic, and the market's going to catch up with this. So, I know they say there's manipulation, but I don't think they can even manipulate it down in the short term too easily. So, I'll be dumping out of oil, going into physical silver if that's the way it plays out. But holding on a little bit longer because I don't really want to show profit in this year. That's one thing too. That's in my decision. I don't want to show profit in this year. And if I see a major spike coming up in this year at all, I will show profit going into the physical silver.